Hello friends, we are here today in 2 Corinthians chapter 12. This is the second to last chapter, but it's basically the main last chapter. You know, the rest of it's just talking about travel details and saying hello and saying goodbye. But he ends it with a bang. You know, he was talking about boasting in the last chapter, and he was talking about all the things that he boasts about. And it was a strange list, a list of things that God essentially did to him. You know, essentially, God made him go through all of these things, and yet he perseveres through them. And it must have seemed strange to the people that were reading it, that rather than boasting in the ways that God has blessed him and made him mighty and great, he's boasting about all the ways that he has prevailed in difficulty. I pointed this out yesterday, that was part of the criticisms that were being put toward him, that he must not be an apostle, you know, a true apostle, like these super apostles, because he's not being blessed. And so Paul starts this next chapter, and he says, you know what I will boast in. And he doesn't even use himself as, he doesn't even really directly say it himself. It's almost like he's saying, look, this may or may not have happened. And he's like, I know this man 14 years ago. And I should say right away that he is definitely talking about himself. No commentator really questions that. And he says, and this person, was taken up into the third heaven. And the third heaven is another way of saying heaven. You know, back then the idea was like the air around us here, this is the first heaven. The sky above us, what we can see, that's the second heaven. But what's above the sky, you know, what's beyond our vision, the things that we can't perceive, that's the third heaven. And he says, I was brought up into the third heaven, and God revealed things to me, things that I can't say, things that are even hard to understand. And he said, no, 14 years ago, that's about right after he was saved in Damascus and before he started his first missionary journey. So there was a handful of years, though, that we have no idea what Paul was doing, but we now know that this happened. And it's interesting that he doesn't even directly say it, you know? He's acting like it happened to someone else, you know? He was saying whether it was in the body or out of the body, that might be why he's talking about it as if it was someone else. But he said, you know, I was given this revelation. And then, in the same sentence, he says, but I was given a thorn in my flesh. And I asked 3 times for God to take away this thorn in my flesh. And God said, he said, oh, it's perfect how he says it. He essentially says, my power is made perfect in your weakness. He's saying because of this thorn in the flesh, it's going to keep you down to earth. And so what's Paul saying here? He's saying there's 2 things that happened. One, I was taken up into heaven and God revealed things to me, things that I won't say. And he doesn't talk about this anywhere else in the New Testament. And he said, but I was also given a thorn in the flesh, and God said that my power is made perfect in your weakness. And he says, I am going to boast not in the revelation that I got from God, but in the thorn in the flesh. I am boasting in the thorn of the flesh because that's God. He is made perfect through my weakness. And so I will boast about God and what he has done, not for me, but through my weakness, things that he has been able to do through me. And I think about what that means for us. You know, one thing is that we shouldn't boast about ourselves. We should have a humble idea of ourselves. But it also means that God can use our weaknesses to show his strengths. There's many times in the Bible God does this, and I see it in my life too. You know, in the Bible I think of Gideon, you know, being the smallest person in the smallest family, and then God used him to bring down an entire army. I can even think of myself. You know, many people don't know this, but I was born with dyslexia. I'll die with dyslexia. It's not something that you'll really get over. It's something that you can work through, but you know, if you have dyslexia, you always have dyslexia. And you know, it's interesting, the part that's really difficult for me is reading comprehension. When I was in school, they would look at me and they would say, you know, he's clearly a very intelligent person, you know, off the charts in some ways, but his reading comprehension abilities are just completely not there. And yet, what do I spend my life doing? Even apart from this YouTube channel, you know, understanding and explaining the scriptures is something that God has been able to do through me. Not because of any ability. I have no ability to understand the scriptures. God has the ability to explain it to me. God has the ability to make it so that I can understand it, so that I might communicate it to others. So that is 2 Corinthians chapter 12. Have a great day.